Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Cryptix and I'm bringing to you another Vanguard Zero video. However, this time it's not going to be a deck profile, but a discussion, and it's a question that I often get from new players. Why are draw triggers so good? Why are they the preferred trigger in Vanguard Zero? And oftentimes I see a lot of newer players wanting to run crits or wanting to run stands and stuff like that, and I'm here to tell you today why you shouldn't be doing that, why you should just be running draws, and why draws are so effective and why draws will win you games. The main reason is because card advantage is different in Zero than it is for the physical card game. In regular Vanguard, standard or premium, you've got card advantage and you gain card advantage through skills and stuff like that. The main source of your card advantage that you get in the physical card game is your drive checks. So in Zero, our drive checks go to the bottom of the deck. If your drive checks are going to the bottom of the deck, how are you going to draw cards other than your card skills? Because currently there aren't any card skills except Tsukiyomi that can draw a ton of cards. So your card advantage is more important in Zero, I think, than it is in the physical card game. I mean, in the physical card game, it is important, as it is with any card game in general, but I think it's more important in Zero because you also don't guard from hand. You know, in the physical game, cards have shield value printed on the side of them, and you can, call them to the guardian circle and, guard your opponent's attacks that way, rather than, setting up intercepts in Zero. And that's your main source of defense. Now you don't have that in Zero, and you rely completely on grade 2 intercepts as your main source of defense. I mean, obviously you have damage shield as well, which definitely helps considerably, considering we don't have the ability to guard from hand like we do in the physical card game. But intercepting is like your main priority currently, at least. In the future we're going to get cards that just ignore intercept, like blockade, but for different clans that are more aggressive. Narukami was one of the decks that was in the Vanguard Zero Champions lineups, and one of the main things that I noticed in all of his fights were the fact that he was able to ignore intercepts. So that just shows you how important intercepting is in Zero. And if you're not drawing cards, you're not going to hit your intercepts, because your opponents have to attack your intercepts to get to your Vanguard, so they're going to do so, or they'll retire them, and you're forced into a position where you need to have intercepts, and draws are the main source of revenue for that. So that's why when you see a lot of my deck profiles, a lot of other YouTubers deck profiles, you're gonna notice that they're gonna run a high draw count in most of their decks. I'm not saying that in certain decks you can't run stands. However, I am saying that in most decks you're going to run draw triggers, and that's just how it is. So your drive checks go to the bottom. You refill your intercepts with draw triggers, so you draw into your intercepts and you get to them quicker. And also, another really important part about draw triggers is that they are both good on the defensive and offensive turn, because you check a defensive crit and it goes to the damage zone and you get that power, and that's about all that it does. But what if your opponent is playing something like Spike Brothers, where they are able to just say, screw that, I don't care about your defensive trigger, I'm gonna hit over it anyways. Royals currently is good at doing this right now too, and it's only gonna get better in the future. And there are going to be decks that are going to hit high numbers and not care about your defensive triggers. So a defensive crit or a defensive stand doesn't do anything for you. Whereas if you run 9 draw and you check a defensive draw or a defensive heal, it's always going to do something for you. So you're always going to gain advantage in that way. So that's why draw triggers are important. And then the rest of this video, I want to talk about why the other triggers are not the triggers that you want to run. Because it's easy to say, yes, draw triggers are the most important trigger in the game. Any high level player that's gotten up into the upper legend ranks will tell you that draw triggers are without a doubt the best trigger to run in most decks. Now, moving on to crits are just not that good, and the reason why is because they proc your opponent's PGs when they're about to go to 5 or 6. So basically the only time a crit is useful is within the first 2 to 3 turns of a game, where the opponent is sitting at 1 or 2 damage. Because if they're sitting at 3, it's going to proc a PG. If they're sitting at 4, it's going to proc a PG, and so forth. It's just, it doesn't do anything beyond the first couple of turns. So you're either forced to run high crit counts, which will take away from your card draw, which will ultimately affect your ability to set up intercepts and be on the defensive. Or you can run low amounts of crits, and then you're just kind of gambling on a really, really low chance to hit it early games. Sure, there is going to be that game where you do hit it, and sure, you might do it a couple times in a row, like 2 to 3 games in a row, but ultimately, with 33% of your deck being triggers, and let's say 7 of them were draws and 2 of them were crits, what are the odds that you're really going to hit that consistently to help push damage in the early game? It's not very high. So ultimately, if you want to run crits, you're going to run them at high numbers, and they're just completely useless in the late game. So on top of that, whenever you check a crit, all of your effects go to your Vanguard. So it's not like you can be like, oh, I'm going to put my crit on my rear guard like you would in the physical card game, because the game just automatically puts that crit on Vanguard, which is why they're just not that good. And then also, if you're not hitting past your damage shield, like if you're playing a clan that doesn't hit, you know, those 21k numbers, and you're not able to hit past damage shield, crits are also kind of useless in that sense. And then they suck defensively. I mean, like, they really do. They don't net you anything. You don't get any card advantage. You just get the 5k power. And like I said, you're going to be playing against some clans that just don't care about defensive triggers. So I don't think that crits are a viable option necessarily. I think they are by far, in Zero, I think they're the worst trigger. I will say there is an exception. So when you're first starting out in Zero, and you're first starting to play ranked play, you're going to be in the rookie, you know, like E rank, lower D rank and stuff like that. And majority of the time, unless the people that you're playing against have spent a little bit of money and acquired some rank rewards, which if they're acquiring rank rewards that quickly, I don't think they're going to be as low of a rank as that. But early ranking, you can run high amounts of crits and lower amounts of draws because you're more likely to hit those crits and your opponent is less likely to have PGs. So you can steal games when your opponent's at 4 and then you check a crit to Vanguard and then your Vanguard hits and then they lose. But there's a pivoting point. When you get to the middle to high B, low A, your opponent's gonna have at least 2 to 3, if not a full playset of PGs in their deck. And then once you get to Legend, everyone's gonna have 4 PGs in every deck that they play, like no exceptions. That's just how it is. So once you get to that Legend threshold, you automatically just drop crits entirely and run draws, especially in decks like Perfect Riser. I cringe whenever I see people run crits in Perfect Riser because he just gets a static crit and doesn't care about defensive checks either way. And the reason why he's so strong is because he gets that static crit and he's able to bait PGs so early on in the game, but then he retains that crit and he's not relying on it on a drive check. So, you know, like that deck's gonna draw a lot because they're gonna be running high amounts of draws, and then he always has a crit. That's why, you know, that's what makes that deck good. That's what makes crits in that deck good. And other decks that gain static crits like Galahad or just Imperial Daughter, just any deck that just has a static crit to their Vanguard, that's what makes crits good in those decks. Because I know you're thinking like, why should I sacrifice a, you know, only hitting 1 damage to 2 damage per turn when I could hit 3 or 4? Well, they're just not going to activate majority of the time, and when they don't activate, they don't do anything for you. Absolutely nothing. So I think crits are objectively the worst trigger in the game, except for whenever you're first starting out. Now, on to stands. So stands are a little tricky because some decks can get away with running them and some decks just don't. Because they suffer from similar issues as crits, because if you're playing stands, you have to swing with your rear guards in a specific pattern, hitting your opponent's Vanguard, and then sacrificing the ability to hit your opponent's Vanguard with another column, only to restand the other column and hit with that. So And that's only, you know, that's situational. It can happen like that sometimes, and it can also not happen like that sometimes, depending on what your opponent checks and what their damage shield is. You know, you're just relying on a specific attack pattern, and then also if you decide that you don't want to do that attack pattern and you check a stand, it's completely worthless. And they're also completely worthless defensively as well, because they don't do anything other than give you power. So they suffer from a lot of the same issues as critical triggers. However, the exception for these is that they do work in some decks. The main being Tsukiyomi. Like, you definitely want to run stands in Tsukiyomi because you're gonna draw a lot of cards from her skill. You're gonna draw a lot of cards and do a lot of filtering through your other card skills. And also, if you run too many draws in that deck, you're gonna get, you know, close to deck out. So whenever you're running stands in Tsukiyomi, you'll know when you're checking them. You'll know, okay, I've got a stand coming up, so I need to attack like this with this column so I can cycle this card, and get to that stand, then swing with Vanguard, then stand this column again, and then attack with this column so I can cycle down to my heal that'll be ready defensively next turn. Stuff like that. So I think, you know, that deck gets away with it, but honestly, I don't see many other decks running them, and the reason is because you have to make your attack patterns in such a way where you risk not being able to hit with a column only to hit with another column, which doesn't make any sense to me when you could just run draws and make both columns hit in the first place. So, you know, it's not as much of a multi-attack enabler as a lot of people think. And I think that some decks like Tsukiyomi can get away with running them, and it also helps them get past double intercepts. That's another exception, is you know, it helps decks get past double intercepts. Decks that don't have any natural retires and decks that don't have any like restanders like Novas and Kagero, you know, those are the decks that you kind of want to think about running stands in, because it'll help you get past double intercepts. But like I said, they won't do anything for you defensively. They don't net you any card advantage, and card advantage in Zero is arguably the most important thing, because if you don't have card advantage, you're just going to die, because you can't guard from hand, you can't choose whenever to proc your PGs, just specific elements of the game that make card advantage the most important factor in the game, I think. So to kind of wrap things up, I just wanted to talk to you guys today about why draw triggers are so impactful in Zero right now and for the foreseeable future. Obviously, that's susceptible to change as we, you know, get more cards that can ignore PGs or can ignore intercepts. That stuff is bound to happen in the future as we get more powerful card effects. But for the foreseeable future, draws are going to be the top dog, and these were my reasons why. So if you found this helpful or useful or interesting, please hit subscribe and like this video. Also, go follow me over on Twitch. I will be streaming, but I'm currently reevaluating my stream schedule. I have to prioritize college over YouTube and Twitch, and I think the Monday, Wednesday, Friday stream schedule is getting in the way of that a bit. So I'm going to be reevaluating my stream schedule and probably move down to a 2-day-a-week stream, and it'll more than likely be Thursday, Friday, but it could also be Friday, Saturday, and then if I end up being able to squeeze in the extra time, I might do Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But yeah, that's just currently under reevaluation, so I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like for me, and you know, how I can be the most productive in my personal life, as well as you know, try to put as much effort into content creation, because I do want to bring excellent quality content to you guys. I want to be entertaining on stream, and I want you guys to look forward to that. So hopefully you do, and like I said, if you found this interesting, please hit like and subscribe, and then I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much.